Welcome back to Pixels and Pints Up Late, where we're going to hit one big long topic for an hour to an hour and a half, as well as drink a big strong beer, one each. We've all got the same brewery tonight, so that'll be interesting. All the different. No?
Technically, I got a second. Having a delightfully
My fridge has got beer in it too.
I'm Dan. I'm here tonight with Tom with his 2 beers.
Yeah, 2 beer Tom. Whoa.
And Pete.
Hi. Couldn't think of anything smart to say.
Enthusiastic Pete. So tonight we decided, I decided and put it to the guys, and they agreed.
We did.
In this day and age, we're gonna do an episode called Chasing the Dragon. If you don't know what Chasing the Dragon is, it's a drug term where you are always chasing the same high as your first hit. So we thought we'd put this into practice with sorry, bad choice of words. Put this in because of this day and age where we're getting
on camera.
multiple sequels and remakes and redos and on-tellings of this and that in TV.
Cinematic universes and everything.
And things that just seem to burn out over time. There's a few things that spark this in recent times, which is obviously the Marvel universe trying to... That's Pete pouring his nitro beer and almost flowing it over the rim.
That was chasing
Thank
the dragon.
God for physics and a meniscus.
So yeah, inspired by a few things. Inspired by me being absolutely burnt out on all modern TV shows and not finding anything. Well, yes. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, who seem to have caught the dragon this time around. With their Deadpool and Wolverine, but they chased it for a long time after Endgame. Star Wars, that recently Kathleen Kennedy says she wants to leave and retire on a high.
Oh, really?
On another
she's
high.
Got a time machine, does she?
Yeah, so she'll be chasing the dragon there, I'm sure. So inspired by all those things, we've picked a movie, a TV show, a game, and a beer going on theme for us all. Do you want to introduce your beer, Pete? Seems you've already poured it.
Sure. So,
do you want me to go first with my first little beer that I've basically finished?
I didn't know you already knocked
it doesn't count.
My 2 beer Tom. Hijacking. Hello. I can review these guys again because I don't work for them anymore, and I'm very excited because I went back to the brewery. I went back to Batch the other day, had a wonderful time. The guys are still great, but now my embargo on reviewing Batch beers on the podcast is done well and truly after my end of employment there. I'm very excited to get the newest edition of their coffee milk stout on nitro. They've started using double roasters Flight Path as their coffee of choice. And it is good because they've basically gone back to a large format can so you get more of the deliciousness. And I needed a real pick-me-up after work today. There is a really, really nice bitter coffee flavor coming through. And then that sweet milkiness of your regular Elsie, your Elsie base coming through. And it's almost more like a triple shot mocha. That's the kind of flavor I'm getting in terms of like, you're thinking like a coffee kind of thing. Yes, but it's good. It's good to see the guys. You can tell though that they got rid of their canning line and are using
printed labels.
East Coast. No, using East Coast to fill cans now. And the nitro was very different to the nitro pours I've had of years past. So they had their own old canning line, the nitro kind of down pat. It's still smooth and delicious, and don't get me wrong, but as someone who drank a lot of nitro batch beers over the years, you can kind of tell the difference. Just in seeing it in the head was a lot bubblier and almost like fluffier, as opposed to like the kind of solid creamy head you used to get in some of the ways they pack their nitro beers. But it's excellent. I won't review it just because it's a little sneak peek that I might be able to do some more batch beers on the podcast. But it's very, very enjoyable. Nice little coffee hit, and is going to get me through the next hour recording. So happy fucking days. On to you, Peter.
So you'll just kind of jump in the middle of the episode to review your actual beer?
Yeah, I'm letting it warm up a bit.
Yeah, cool. So I'm drinking. This is probably. Excuse me. Where did that come from? Frog jumped in my throat. This is probably the first episode in fucking 7 seasons. So I think we're at. How many episodes are we up to? 120, 119, 120, somewhere around there.
Yeah, something like that.
That I think we've ever been drinking, that we'll ever review beers that were donated to us from listeners. So huge thank you to, got a cat jumping up on me, to Beer Fontaine and Jeremy for supplying us with a little love pack of various Fontaine beers. He's been a listener for some time now, and apparently we've gotten him through some big brew days over the years. So thank you very much, guys. This is the Whiskey Barrel Imperial Stout on Nitro. Now, it's a very dark black can with dark copper lettering on it, so it's hard to see on the camera. I had this off Nitro the other day, so it's the same base beer on and off Nitro. And I'm just trying to. I think it was the first beer I had for the night, actually. So I'm fairly certain it's very similar. It's just obviously it has a different texture. It's got a different mouthfeel. It's nice and kind of pillowy head. It was a pretty good pour, to be honest with you.
It was a good pour. That's probably the best pour that I've seen you do.
Yeah. Usually I make a big fucking mess with Nitro. Lots of solid coffee notes. It's got a really good bitterness from the amount of coffee. The bourbon barreling does come through. It's not in your face. Sometimes it can be too subtle. Sometimes it can be kind of overpowering. This is kind of just about spot on for me. And some good chocolate notes coming through the base as well. Certainly when I was trying to clear the froth and wondering if I was going to have to drink it with a straw, you get a lot of the kind of the milky, I wouldn't say milk chocolate, but you kind of get the milky texture, and then you get the chocolate flavor through the Nitro head a lot more than you get in the flavor of the beer. But that's fucking excellent. I'm going to have to give that a 4.5. That's a really fucking solid Imperial Stout. So it's
beautiful.
Nice.
So, sorry, was it bourbon or whiskey barreled?
Whiskey. My apologies.
Whiskey.
Yeah. Less sugar that way.
Better for the hips.
You leave my hips out of this episode, Tom.
Well, they don't lie.
And they bring all the boys to... No, never. Wrong song. Carry on, Dan.
I also have Beer Fontaine. So thank you for the guys, or Jeremy, for sending this over. And also, he said we could do these on or off the podcast. We were not in any way obligated to do these on and review them. He just sent them over as a bit of a care package. I just want to throw that out there.
And if he made a dumpster fire in a can, we would call it out. So that was the risk he was taking.
Yes, definitely. But this is a fucking phenomenal beer. I don't know how many of these were actually in the pack, because I saw this as soon as I took it out, and I'm like, I'm keeping one of these or the only one of these. I can't remember if there was another one in there, but I'm putting this aside because I want to drink it. It's a Belgian Quad Wee Heavy. It's a rye.
I got that one too.
Yeah.
Rye
rye whiskey barrel aged. It's 11%. It's my Belgian French is terrible. Petit Lourdes. Lourde.
Isn't that? Yeah, I definitely didn't get that. That's the oak barrel things, the Lourdes that we've talked about that before.
Okay, good.
I think.
I'm glad you know what you're talking about.
I just convincingly bullshit all the time.
This is a fucking phenomenal beer. Like, it's everything that it says. The beautifully short, to the point description on the back of the bottle is once again tickling my fancy. A beer. Oh, sorry, it's white writing, and I've got less low light in here. A beer brought together by two ideas of a Belgian dark strong ale with a wee bit of Scottish influence. A big soft malt beer with caramel and stone fruit flavors. It's balanced with sweet and spicy umami, a cognac-like finish. I don't know about the stone fruit flavors, but everything else that there is excellent. You get the whiskey barrel. When I poured it, it had a light head to it. It's settled now, but you got the whiskey barrel straight away on the aroma, the woody whiskey smell of it, the spice of it there. It's oozing with complementary flavors all the way through it. The toffee and the wood and the whiskey and the slightly salty, spicy umami characters there. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's incredible, actually. It's for something that's a blend of styles. It's great because they don't always or very rarely work out when you try and blend styles because they're styles on their own for particular reasons. But that's fantastic. I absolutely love it, and I'm going to have to try and sit because it is 11%. So,
what's it called? Sorry,
what I said
Petite.
I don't think it's actually called anything unless
Petite
it's just
Lord 2021. So it's been barrel aged.
Well, this is the 2023.
Okay. 2023. Got it. No, that was not in my love package.
Sorry, Pete.
That's okay. That's all right.
You might have to get online and get some.
All good.
It's a really beautiful label too. Like it's a simple. It's just got some geometric. Sorry, the light.
No, it's capturing it. It's got it.
It's just got that slightly beautifully embossed silver logo in the middle of it. The rest of the label's just matte. It's really nice texture. It feels nice. It's great and impeccably lined up too.
I'm sure Jeremy double checked that before sending him.
It's absolutely ridiculous. If you didn't know there was
Seamless.
a scene there, you would say it's just one layer. Like slipped it over the top and stuck it on as a cylinder.
I'll have to check mine once it's still wrapped in the paper in the fridge, like very carefully laid to rest. Yes.
I think I'm wrong. I think I was referring to another word that started with L and sounded a little bit like lewd.
Foda.
Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking.
We had the Hop Nation Foda sours a while back.
Translates. It's French for heavy.
Oh, okay. We heavy. Oh, petite, little heavy. Okay. Yep, that makes sense. Yep. Okay. That's
fucking
perfect sense.
Well, it's pronounced
in French.
Yeah. It's funny. I've got a new guy. I know I'm going to derail this conversation before we get started.
Here we go. Strap in, everyone.
New staff member at work that I've just employed. And he's of French heritage. Grew up in the Caribbean on one of the islands, and then spent a whole bunch of time in Montreal in Canada. It's really funny because one of my other staff members that sits next to him, so it's kind of me against the window, then Seb, the new guy, and then Michael. Michael's born in Hong Kong, Chinese heritage, but if you ever spoke to him over the phone and you hadn't met him, you would never know that he was Chinese. He's like Suey, Aussie accent as. Except
2 years Aussie.
Well, yes, but do you know what I mean? Like it's Asian heritage, Chinese heritage. Yeah, you're right. Suey was born and raised here, but you would never know that he had a Chinese heritage when you talk to him over the phone, except when he talks to anyone with any kind of accent. It doesn't matter what the accent is. The minute he's speaking to somebody on the phone, he slips into this thick Chinese accent.
Really?
And it's always been slightly entertaining, but now I've put him next to a guy with a French accent, and now it's like, where is Michael and what have you done with him? So bizarre. Anyway, carry on. I don't know where they came from. It's story time, gentlemen.
It was. I might as well jump into my beer because I've cracked it and had a fair few sips. I have the Patience 22, another beer fontaine. I've got two others left from the care package. The Australian IPA was bang on as well. So, Jeremy, if you're listening to this, that was an absolute cracker. I would definitely be getting more of that. So this is Patience 23, the whiskey barrel Imperial Stout. They say on the back there that they have used an Australian single malt whiskey barrel, which they laid this in for 1 year. And they I totally agree with them. 1 whole year of waiting, looking at barrels and being patient, knowing it's worth the wait. I imagine that must be very tempting as a brewer, knowing you're making something that good and just staring at it for a year going, oh, I want it now. Can't have it. Go away. All that kind of
There's
stuff.
also that massive anxiety that it might not be good and you get it out and
you wait a year for nothing.
Look, it's kind of very similar description to Pete's, except so much whiskey. It's great in terms of like, this actually feels like I've, without realizing, dropped a shot of like I Boilermakered myself. Like so much whiskey straight up front. Like a real nice hit of booze. It's not completely overpowering, but it's that woody whiskey like barrel note coming straight through at the top, and then it's just decadent chocolatey notes. And it's a really long lasting beer on the palate. Like just a couple of sips and it's still rolling around in there. This is absolutely sensational. It's 11.5%, that's for sure. I'm very warm and fuzzy all of a sudden, and loving life. This is definitely worth the wait. They've well done is all I can say. And I'm definitely giving that like 4.75. That's cracking.
Yeah, nice.
That is absolutely cracking. I think if it wasn't so much of a whiskey note up front, because it is a bit jarring at first from the aroma, like when you first have the taste, it's that whiskey note. But once you actually let it roll around your mouth and down the whole tongue, it blends in perfectly. I think if it just
give me a
didn't have
semi
that,
with the way you're describing it, though.
You're welcome. If it didn't hit you that straight up front, I think it'd be a perfect 5. It's a little bit too boozy right at the tip, Pete, just to finish you off.
Thanks,
so to speak.
Jesus. Dan, what was your score? Sorry, mate.
I was just thinking about that while Tom was talking about his. I think this one is perfectly barrel balanced. It's on that level. I'm not going to mark it down for it just because it's my personal preference. It's probably a little too sweet for me, but the rest of the flavors that are in there and that barrel just works. The whole spice aspect and subtle spice. I'm not talking about big heavy spice of any sort, but it's just the whole combination of flavor in there is just fantastic. It's all so well integrated and balanced and blended. The sweetness works with it, even though it's not my preference. I think it works absolutely brilliantly with all that. So it's a definite 5 for me because
nice.
that is a faultless beer in my mind, and I would be very interested if he's put that in competitions and what it's gotten, because if I got that at the table judging, that would be gold medal stuff for sure.
Close the book and walk out of the judging competition. Yeah. Done for the day.
I just wanted to it's funny. I don't know if I'm tasting the flavors now, like the flavors change for me now because it's starting to warm up, or because it's my brain's reinforcing what I'm reading on the can. So there is very dark text on the back that talks about smooth vanilla and caramel richness, and I'm getting a lot of caramel, like almost Werther's caramel toffee, on both the nose and in the flavor. Goes on to say it's Big Otis 2014 to 2024. Rest in peace, Otis, a good boy, a great boy, the best boy. This beer was crafted with Morris Otter, rolled oats, chocolate wheat, roasted barley, special bee, and crystal malts.
Yeah, pretty much got the same. Yeah,
I suspected it was the same base.
The taste notes on the back are fantastic. It's no waffle. It's just these are the things you if you want to taste it. Like this is what we taste, so we want you to taste this.
Yeah,
they're fantastic. Also, it's a lovely purple. This can.
Yeah,
it's a very very deep purple. Yeah, it's great.
Not like my Hamburglar shirt that I'm wearing today. For those not watching on YouTube,
I wasn't going to say anything, but. You are the Grimace shake.
It was Grimace. That's right. It's
Grimace.
Yeah,
Grimace. Yeah.
I'm also going to take a punt because I know Jeremy will listen to this, and I'm going to be probably completely wrong. But the whiskey barrel that I would like to hope that I think they've used, I think they may have used one of the Starwood red wine barrels because I'm getting really like red winey tanniny flavor coming through as it's warming up. Jeremy, if I've gotten that right, thank you. If I've gotten it wrong, tell me otherwise. I'd love to know which whiskey you've used because it's fantastic. Yeah, it's reminiscent of that. But yeah, that's my wild toss right on a coaster, kind of thing.
Nice. So our hour to hour and a half episode started with a 20-minute beer review, which is fine.
Mate, you waffled on for about 8 minutes about some bloke making phone calls.
I wasn't pointing fingers. I was just pointing it out because it's amusing. Shall we kick off with Chasing the Dragon?
Sure. Let's do it.
Dan, you've got some crackers.
Am I going? Since I'm on the top of the list there, I think we've all got good movies, like great movies, just in different. We're more in line in the movies we've chosen, I think, than in the TV shows we've chosen.
I definitely think those movies definitely overlap as well.
Oh yeah.
So my two Chasing the Dragon movies are Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. So the first two part of the Cornetto trilogy, and what I base every English comedy I watch from now on. And some of them go, so I've got a beard hair in my mouth. Hazards of the job.
Yummy.
It's like you even get some movies, the English comedies or horror comedies that liken themselves to Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and you go, yeah, okay, cool, I'll watch this. If it's half as good, it's still going to be fun and funny. And they just don't even scratch the surface of the filming of Edgar Wright and the comedic timing of Nick Frost and Simon Pegg. And it's just they started with Shaun of the Dead, and Suey, like so many other things, got me onto Shaun of the Dead. He brought it over one day when I was living over in Balcombe Hills, and he said, "You've got to watch this." I think I probably watched it every night for at least the next 2 weeks after he got me on it. And I think the same was with when Hot Fuzz came out on DVD. I got that, and I watched all of the behind the scenes. I think the gag reel on the Hot Fuzz DVD is, if not funnier than the movie, because it's just 10, 15 minutes of the gag reel behind the scenes, like editing floor cuts that are just absolutely fucking hilarious. I'm gonna have to
there's the great one in Shaun of the Dead where they're doing the fence jumping.
Yeah.
And it's just, you watch Simon Pegg jump off the trampoline and he goes off, and then Nick Frost just goes boom and just smacks into the fence straight through it.
So is the kind of, by virtue of the topic, are we essentially saying that it's fucking hard to find a movie with that energy, or that recaptures the energy that you got from that film, whatever that energy happens to be, because mileage varies, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to pick things that were not the stuff that we'd talking too much about before. I know we've spoken about Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz quite a bit, but it's one of those things where a lot of movies repeat themselves, not so much anymore, but a lot of movies used to repeat themselves on TV, or you're flicking through whatever your chosen streaming service, and you go, like, I just want something easy to watch. I just want something that I know is fun. It tickles my funny bone. Tickles my funny bone. It speaks to me. Hot Fuzz was only on TV like 2 weeks ago. Me and Louise came in about halfway through it, and she was watching it. I was doing something else, and I ended up standing behind her on the lounge watching
the whole movie,
but way longer than I probably should have.
Doing the classic dad watch. Like, I'm not watching this.
Yeah. And I can't think of a movie since Hot Fuzz that has, like, even Nick Frost and Simon Pegg's other movies. So Paul wasn't as good. I don't think World's End was as good as the first two. Yeah. And I think those two set such a bar for me for English comedy that, I mean, I know there's some incredible English comedy with Monty Pythons and all that sort of stuff, but they set such a bar with English comedy and just comedy movies overall that it's so hard for me to go, yep, that's as good as Hot Fuzz, because I just don't think there is one as good as Hot Fuzz.
And I think it's worth talking about that tonight too, in terms of what is it about that film or that property, that IP, that really stands the test of time and is difficult to find something like it in kind of modern cinema or modern games.
I think that's
totally, yeah.
I think that's a really good point, because both of those movies are not political. They're not preachy. They don't try to tell you anything. They are sheer entertainment, and that's it. They're
almost the perfect parodies.
Yeah,
the perfect parody of a horror film and the perfect parody of an action cop film.
Yeah.
And then just that was the problem with World's End was
it didn't have a source.
You didn't know what it wanted to be.
Yeah.
Like, it was just a bit too, well, let's do all this again kind of thing. We'll get the same gang back together and hope the magic kind of sticks. And it didn't. That was the problem.
I also think it tried to be everything to everyone too, with the amount of randomness towards the end of that film.
Yeah, it got a bit out of hand. But yeah.
And who knows, Simon Pegg was becoming to be a bit of a star by then, and Nick Frost was doing some other bits and pieces. So who knows? They had a bit of head butting within Hot Fuzz. So who knows whether it just didn't work out for him in that third movie, or maybe it was just the recapturing that magic. Maybe they were chasing that dragon too in the third episode of the Cornetto trilogy. They always said it was going to be a trilogy, and I mean that's setting the bar really high when you've got two excellent movies,
cracker films,
and then you go for the third, and you haven't quite captured that dragon again. I mean, I didn't think of that with this topic, but it's probably a very good analogy for it as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I mean, Tom's one, the next one is a perfect example as well.
Yes,
trying to chase it down the track with the comedy, but
I think what the especially just finishing off on Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz is, like Dan said before, like walking in halfway through doing something else, but you stand behind the couch and watch it. The replayability of that film is unending. It is the most watched film in my household. Emma has a tattoo on her arm that references it.
Really?
Very obscure moment, and you'd love it. Okay. She's got a little postcard stamp with raspberries in it.
I think we've talked about
just
this.
And purely because she loves that line of, oh, because everyone sells raspberries down here. Your dad sells raspberries, doesn't he, Andy? Oh, and apples. It's just like, or apples and then raspberries. Yeah, it's just that the most obscure throwaway reference from the two most annoying characters in that film that you just want to punch in the face, but they're just as hilarious for doing it. Yeah. But yeah, it's just nothing to watch. If we can't figure out what to watch, it's just fuck it. Put on Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz. It usually ends up being Hot Fuzz. I think I prefer Shaun of the Dead over the two, purely because just the originality of that when it came out. It's still like the amount of times I walk around and see someone just with any sort of red on their shirt. You got red on you.
Got red on you. I quote fucking it's on random all the time. All the time. Anytime anyone says anything that's fucking random, that's the comment.
My most used GIF is the Sean cheersing. Like that's my most used thing. But yeah. Yes, the movie I've chosen basically on that same thing of replayability is Super Troopers for me, and a lot of the things that I've chosen have come through a I know I've never really not agreed, but I've never really proclaimed Dan's love of the cinematic experience as much as he has. But it comes from a shared experience. It was me and some of my best mates at school. Super Troopers for us was the pinnacle of cinema for us. We'd never seen anything funnier. This was obviously pre Shaun of the Dead and all that kind of stuff, which in my mind is, you know, you got the Canadian influence here and you got the English influence here into comedy, and they're just as good as each other. But to this day, if you put Super Troopers on in front of me right now, I would just sit down there and just be like giggling my little ass off. I still find it as funny, but totally agree. The terms of chasing the dragon, all the other movies from Broken Lizard after that have just fallen short. They haven't been as good. Beer Fest was pretty fucking close. I'll give them that.
Beer Fest was the closest. Yeah. Slap and Salmon, I didn't think was any good at all. And, Super Troopers 2 just didn't anywhere near cut the mustard. They probably even shouldn't have tried to do it.
Well, it was again a lot of repeating themselves, and like, you know, as much as that's a funny segment in their first film, it doesn't work for the entire second film of that thing. But yeah, it's just one of those things for me. It's like I associate all that joy of watching that with thinking back to sitting there in the lounge room with the mates, and just then that's how we communicated for years, was just entirely through quoting Super Troopers at each other. It didn't matter what we were going through. You could find a Super Troopers quote to match the situation kind of thing.
I think in all cases, we're going to end up having a very personal, emotional connection to all the content we're talking about tonight. Yeah, that's cool.
I think that's a big part of it too, though, is the connection to it. I mean, if it's not an enjoyable product as it is, you're not going to have a shared experience around it either. Like, I mean, I wonder,
unless you're some of those people who really like punishing themselves by watching really shit films and like enduring the punishment together. There is a sect of people out there who do love doing that,
but not the ones that are so bad they're hilarious. Like, was it the Hindi version of Star Wars? Was it?
I'm talking about like
Turkish Star Wars.
Turkish Star Wars.
Yeah, that's incredible. That movie. It's just something.
I've got too many movies. The more we've been talking, the more movies come to mind. Like
as I was just talking about Super Troopers, I was just like, and there's that. Oh, and there's
Spaceballs and fucking, because that's got its own thing around it.
Yeah.
And all of the Mel Brooks films. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So many good films, and I just
Freddy Got Fingered, another classic.
Actually, never seen it.
I've seen bits of. I never got through it all.
Need to be very high to really enjoy that film these days. I think.
Films. Yeah. So on my list, and I'm not going to talk about any of them in super length, but I might just describe why. So Terminator 2 for me was at a time when I was fairly young. It wasn't my first R-rated film, but it was pretty early on in R-rated films for me. It scared the shit out of me, and yet it was fascinating. It had the exact right mix of action. The humor was on beat. It never felt forced. It was just natural, and such a diverse cast in terms of you really to throw all those people into that melting pot. Linda Hamilton, who'd done the first one, and to bring Arnie in for the second one in a completely different character from the first movie, it just worked, and it was the peak for Terminator series. They've never been able to go back and make a film that good. And full credit to James Cameron. The guy nails sequels, particularly back then in an era where anyone who made a sequel, it was always a fucking stinking pile of shit. And then James Cameron comes along, he makes Aliens, a follow-up to an epic fucking movie, and took it in a slightly different direction that worked just as well for various reasons, for different reasons. And then T2 was his very next film from memory. Shame he's gone off the fucking deep end since then. Goonies.
No, he went down to the deep end, searching for Titanic.
Yeah.
He did the Abyss.
He did Abyss.
He was in the deep well before then.
Yeah. He started in the deeps. Goonies. To me, there's a whole series of action adventure films aimed at kids around that time. There was The Explorers with River Phoenix. There was The Last Navigator with a kid. With a kid that my friends all teased me, I looked exactly like the actor at the time because I had that shaggy 70s style bowl haircut in the early 80s when I was growing up. Yeah, you're going to Google it. You're going to look at the title, the cover, and you will see it.
I was muting myself because I was burping and I didn't think you'd want to cut it out. So,
but Goonies, Goonies is a fucking brilliant film. It's such a great adventure. And I don't think they make those types of things anymore.
I haven't watched that film in so long, though.
But you know what immediately made me think of Goonies was
timeless.
You
could watch it today. You could put it.
That's the thing. I could absolutely, yeah.
And any one of our nieces, nephews down in front of it, and they wouldn't even look at the age of it. I think, and it's just because it's timeless. It's an adventure movie, and it's relatable, well written, well acted for a bunch of kids,
and completely innocent. There was no message.
Completely innocent. Yeah.
There was no political message buried in there anywhere. In fact, it's probably these days it's probably a little un-PC.
Yeah, especially with Chunk.
Hey, you guys.
well, that's no, what's the dance they make him do before they open the door?
Truffle
the truffle shuffle.
Yeah, and Data. Come on. Like in terms of racial stereotyping, it's out there, but But it was also innocent in its depiction of those themes as well. Yeah, that maybe you wouldn't get away with making a film like that these days, but you get pretty close. And I would even put Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in that same category of adventure action films that I thoroughly enjoyed as a kid. Maybe less innocent and more aimed at adults there, but kind of same category. Beetlejuice, raw, off the hook humor, very on the line in terms of, is it aimed at adults? Is it aimed at kids? It was very squarely aimed at adults, but I watched it as a kid and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, I love it. Well, we'll see if they recapture that dragon. Yep.
Yeah. Batman, the original 1989 Batman. I just think there's just so much hard to describe character and pizzazz to that film. And whilst there have been other great Batman films, I don't think they've ever recaptured quite the same magic for me again. And then I put Black Hawk Down in there. Now, I put that in there because I love war films. I love war films. And that, for me, it stands out way more than Saving Private Ryan and any of the other groundbreaking films. Black Hawk Down, for me, is the one that I've probably rewatched 100 times and still thoroughly enjoy. Don't know why.
Fair enough.
Still never seen it.
Yeah,
it's very good. I will back Pete up in that. It is very good. I prefer. I don't know. Look, they call it it wasn't even the Great War. It was the Greater War. But it's World War II films that really just. I think it was. Yeah, they're the ones that really always get me. They always get me somehow. Yeah. Yeah,
and I've watched almost every war film that you can put your hands on that wasn't made in the 40s and 50s. And Black Hawk Down stands out for me. It's not the only one, but that's one of the ones that really stands out for me.
I have thought of some other films that I just want to quickly mention. Any classic Muppets film, Treasure Island and Christmas Carol.
Muppets Christmas Carol? Yeah, I
watch Muppets Christmas Carol every Christmas.
I remember you saying that, actually, yeah.
We do. Emma fell asleep last year, and I just went, perfect. Turned it up, cracked another beer, had the time of my life.
But Scrooge, that brings Scrooge to mind for me with Peter Murray. Or Bill Murray, sorry. Peter Murray? Yeah, Bill Murray.
Bill Murray.
Yeah, I'm thinking Peter from Ghostbusters, Bill Murray. Yeah, carry on.
Sorry, for a second I thought you meant Scrooge in Muppets Christmas Carol. I was like,
no.
So Michael Caine would come and slap you. And then Hook. I should have put Hook there.
Oh, there you are, Peter.
The amount of times I've said that to you for no reason. Just you walk into the room. Oh, there you are, Peter. Yes, he just went to take a piss. We're in his house. But like the magic of that film still captures me every time I watch it. Plus, it's the John Williams soundtrack. Like, come on.
And Robin Williams. There's not many films I haven't enjoyed with him in it.
No. Oh, man, the little kid when he's got Toodles marbles and he said Toodles lost his marbles, it fucking still gets me. I love it. It's just, Hook is great. Hook is a great one too. Like it's another one of those ones. I mean, Robin Williams, you could bring up so many Robin Williams films as well.
Yeah.
It was 10 years ago the other day since he passed.
Yeah.
Just on a sad note, let's all cry now. Okay, cool. I'll be on for 10 minutes. Bye.
You know what? I went back and not too long ago, it wasn't for his anniversary of his passing, but not too long ago, don't know why, I just needed to search for some of his old stand-up material.
Fuck, he was funny. He was off the chain.
He runs circles around most humans in terms of his ability to think of something funny on the fly.
On the spot.
And for a long time, I've carried around this idea that unlike most comedians who have to sit there and write material and test material and rewrite it and refine it, he was a guy that you could throw into a situation and he would just instantly be hilarious. Not just funny, but hilarious.
Yeah.
So some of his improv stuff, because he was on a couple of improv shows, like American game shows, sort of improv, just off the hook hilarious. And then his stand-up. His stand-up was...
his stand-up's fantastic.
Because he put himself, certainly in the early years, he put himself into an improv situation where he would walk around and work the fucking crowd and carry someone's jumper around and took someone's scarf off their neck and put it around his head and played like 11 different characters. This is before he was famous for that. So, yeah. Anyway.
The only comedian that I can compare that to in these days that I know of is Ross Noble. Ross Noble is incredible at just doing things just off the cuff. And I don't know how much he prepares his shows or how much. I'd love to actually go and see him back to back, like on 2 different nights of the same tour, just to see how much is prepared and how much goes on, because he had us on the floor one night where he was just talking to a woman in the front row, and she held her bag on her lap the entire session. She was in the front row, and he's like, "Why did you hold it there? Did you think someone was going to come and steal it?" And he does this whole big literal song and dance about her having a sore back. He was calling her crooked back girl, and he was doing the like Fergie or whoever it was. Literally did a song and dance on stage about it. And then he goes, "So why haven't you just put your bag down?" She goes, "Oh, I've got scoliosis."
I have to admit, I haven't seen any live Ross Noble stuff.
We went and saw him quite a bit, and he absolute credit to him. You could see him go for a second. Oh, but being Ross Noble and a comedian, he just leant into it, like absolutely doubled down. But he didn't, because he's not an offensive comedian. No. He just doubled down on it and just went for it. And he apologized to her at the end of the session and bought her a Ross Noble show bag thing, and held it out to her to come and get it from the stage. And then as she just got there, he dropped it.
Wow.
And he did, and then again, to his credit, he jumped off stage and picked it up for her, but he just could not resist that final laugh of getting that crowd to just laugh at this thing that, and I mean, she was good. She was obviously good about it, but he just lent into it, and it was one of the funniest.
I probably would have had a heart attack if I'd been there. I honestly would have had a heart attack.
I'm actually crying now just thinking.
So am I. I didn't even fucking see it.
It was so funny. Yep.
Yeah, I don't think Robin Williams was unique. It was unique in terms of being funny on the fly. I just think he was better than everyone else I've ever.
He was. Yes.
I mean, Russell Peters' crowd work is fucking hilarious at times as well, where he picks various people out of the crowd. But a lot of it's I just think the jokes.
The Robin Williams side of things, in terms of its films, all those films he's in. Now finding out about all the moments that he improvised that made it to the final cut because they were that authentic. There was one I saw the other day, which was the scene in the birdcage when they're in the back in the kitchen tasting something and he's freaking out, and he naturally fell over. Like he just slipped over but kept going and worked it in, and you see the other guys struggling to keep it together, but he's like, no, like keep going, everything's got to go. And they kept it in the final cut of the film. It's in there forever now.
Yeah.
There was another one about in Good Will Hunting. The scene when he talks about his wife farting in bed.
Yep, that was
all entirely improvised.
Yep.
Like, and you just
I didn't know that.
And poor old Matt Damon.
Amazing. It's amazing. And Matt Damon's absolutely pissing himself. And that's entirely authentic.
Yeah.
It's that kind of that's the magic that he brought to films.
Yeah.
Amazing actor.
Anyway, I think we're going to have to move on.
Yeah, look at what this has inspired. These conversations that this has inspired.
Going to have to, sorry, Dan, to interrupt. I was trying to do it off air because I sent you a message. Just need you to turn it down. Oh, did you? So I'm actually hearing Tom through your headset. So it's.
Oh, you want me to turn my headset down, not the. That's me.
I wanted you to
put your hearing aids in, old man.
I wanted you to turn your gain down too because you are clipping a bit, but that's all right. We can cut all this out. It's all good.
We'll see how we go. See how we go with that. So on to TV shows. I had.
Do you want me to go first because I'm the outlier here?
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Yeah, I just think of like I obviously we've talked about this at length in previous recordings about how I've really struggled to get into TV shows in recent years. I've really fallen off catching up with TV. I've dropped series halfway through that I'm just never going to pick up because they're just not engaging me enough. But I think back to these shows, and again, that shared experience that we've talked about before. But the Top Gear and the Walking with Dinosaurs, Walking with Prehistoric, those documentaries, those old BBC ones, that was my family's Sunday night. That was. You rushed home, whatever you were doing on a Sunday, you got home by 8:00 so you could watch Top Gear with Dad. And I now still crave watching those three idiots, absolute idiots, not dissimilar to us, but with motor vehicles going at fast speeds.
And a whole lot more money, just for the record.
Yes, so much more money. But like just watching the way those three idiots interact, and they've fallen off out of grace. They've been dropped by studio after studio. But it's one of the few ongoing TV series that I crave new content for constantly, and it's the only one I continually go back for. I think of like I got on the hype train for Walking Dead, dropped that after the start of the season with Negan because it was just like it's too much. You guys talking about The Boys, it's I haven't started season 4 because again it's too much of the same thing. Game of Thrones, obviously the last 2 seasons fell out. I have now started House of Dragon, enjoying it. One episode in so far.
Everybody hated the ending of the latest season, and I don't see it. So we can talk about that next episode.
When I catch up, we can talk about it. Yeah, and then just I always love a nature documentary. I love a little Blue Planet or a Planet Earth or David Attenborough, and then just seeing it for dinosaurs. I was like, this is great. This is perfect. This is my child coming to fruition. But again, we sat down as a family unit and watched it, and we didn't do that very often. We were off doing, the family would be upstairs watching something they all had watched. I'd be downstairs playing Nintendo. My brother would be off doing something else. One of the other siblings would be off doing something else. But for some reason, these shows were all of us sitting down together as a big family unit of up to 7 people. We'd all watch it, crying, laughing, watching these 3 idiots often almost kill themselves in motor vehicles. And yeah, it's just that's that for me. They're the few TV shows that I still go back to, like, without fail.
Yeah,
still try and track them down, make sure I get new episodes.
I never really got into either of those 2 things.
I'm not a car person, and Top Gear I really enjoyed. If it was on, I'd definitely watch it. I wouldn't go out of my way to watch it, but I would definitely watch it. And I mean, that's another perfect version of Chasing the Dragon. I mean, they tried to replace Clarkson and
May and Hammond, and it never worked.
It never worked.
The Australian version never worked. And
the Australian version is now on Paramount Plus, or it's like only on a streaming service, not even on a free-to-air TV. I mean, and I'm sure there's multiple versions around the world.
Absolutely, there is
that have never broken that international market to do it. And I mean, these were English guys with English celebrities. Yeah, we knew some of them, and some probably more than others because there was a lot of sports stars and things like that in there. So didn't really appeal to other countries if they didn't know who these celebrities were to come in to do hot laps and things like that. But I mean, the sheer charisma of the 3 main people and the humor of what they were doing, even if you weren't a car person, you enjoy it. Like it was just fun to watch, and you would probably learn something as you went along.
A couple of things.
Yeah. Like I said, I never really got into it. I have enjoyed every episode I've seen because obviously it's impossible not to come across them from time to time. But yeah, I never kind of went out of my way to sit down and watch them. But I can totally relate to what you're talking about, a family unit. For me, our family communicating growing up, our family time was set around the TV. It was always movies or TV shows. So that I can 100% relate to. Back when you had to rent a videotape with one episode.
The Friday night run down to Blockbuster.
With one episode of a TV series on it.
Yeah.
Anyway. Dan, I'm going to have to stop and feed the cats in a second. So I don't know if you want to...
We can take a break after TV shows if you'd like. Yep. I mean, I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna call all 3 of these TV shows classics. One of them probably only actually probably qualifies as a classic because it's more widely established, which is MASH. I mean, MASH for me, I still feel like I haven't seen every episode, but I think I've probably seen every episode multiple times.
I've probably only watched 2 or 3 episodes. It was always on when I was a kid, but
it was always on channel 7 about 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yep.
There must have been something else on at that time. There must have been something else on at that time.
I had so much of it went over my head thinking back on it.
Oh yeah. And you watched season 1. I mean, I got the box set many years ago, and you watched season 1, and there was no laugh track, so it's
very dry.
It's quite different when you watch that season, and then it sort of become more mainstream as it went on from there. And like I still remember the deaths that happened in it, and the people that stepped out, and the switching of characters and things like that. And it was quite emotional for a half an hour comedy TV show.
Yeah,
it was. I mean, it was quite heavy in what it was dealing with, but it dealt with it in a very lighthearted way. And I think that's how more people in the world should see this world.
But they also don't make TV series like that anymore. I think that's kind of the point of this topic.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, then you talk at my next to a classic sci-fi TV. One had 11 seasons and multiple movies, and one got one season and a single movie. We're talking Stargate SG-1, which went for 11 seasons. It was your typical monster of the week with an overarching story for the season, like huge amount of episodes in a season. Never got boring.
It's one of the few series I can genuinely say 11 seasons. It was repetitive as fuck, as it was formulaic, and yet it was never boring.
And it evolved too. It wasn't just sticking to the same thing for the sake of this is the method that works for us. You can hear him purring through the microphone.
Oh, can you? Sorry.
No, it's fine. You went from the Gould in the first few seasons to the Replicators in the middle to the Ori at the end, and it was saying something about a religion. It was saying ancient religion. It was saying something about technology, and then it was saying something about modern religion, and it was all wrapped up into this fantastical sci-fi world that was still grounded in our own, which is fantastic. And then Firefly and Serenity. So it was gone too soon, but it was. We've spoken about it many times about how it's the victim of the reality TV show boom of the early 2000s. A brilliantly acted, brilliantly written and directed, even though Joss Whedon has come up as issues in later years. But I mean, you can't fault the work that he did in the late 90s, early 2000s, and the creativity that was there. And I mean, if Firefly wasn't such a phenomenally written and acted show, it wouldn't have been called for to be renewed multiple times over the years, and rumors continuous. And my thing with these is, and one of the things that it sort of inspired this to, and why I've bowed out from a bit of TV at the moment, is good versus evil. You know who the good guys are. We're not in morally grey areas. The team of SG-1 were the good guys. The Ghoul enslaving civilizations across the galaxy were the bad guys.
Yeah.
The Firefly guys were, they were thieves working against the overall government of that because of the civil war that they lost and this and that. But when it came to a moral choice, they made the right choice every time. They made the right choice. They defended.
Captain Mel Reynolds had a very straight and narrow moral compass.
Exactly, and even Jane, was the one that
Jane Town's one of the best.
Yeah, Jane
Town, hands down,
is excellent. And Jane, you could say, was the morally grey one there, but no matter what, he complained all the way through. But how the character was written and acted, he was still always going to make the right choice. Even if he was saying, no, we need to leave, he knew that the rest of them weren't going to, so he was going to stay with his friends and make the right choice. And I think that's the big thing now, this morally grey area where good and evil doesn't seem to exist. The good are a good chunk evil, but the evil aren't a good chunk good. With these characters in these TV shows and movies that are coming out now, it's a real drag on me. So this is why
that's drag on. Just there's a space there for those playing at home.
But I think I don't look. There's older TV shows and movies that have explored characters that are morally ambiguous in an interesting way that was entertaining, and I think that's good TV and good movies. I think these days everyone being morally ambiguous in an unoriginal way is what the drag is. It's just.
Well, I think the thing is because everyone knows that everyone's kind of morally ambiguous when it comes down to it at the end of the day, like in your day-to-day life. So you don't necessarily want that in your entertainment. You want to know, you want that idealistic hero archetype. You want to see that person who kind of makes the good or kind of shows the good kind of thing, and you want your villain to be bad.
But you wouldn't argue that Sin City was a bad movie. Because, but certainly there was moral ambiguity throughout the main characters and the main cast in Sin City.
Yeah,
I just think.
But you go into a movie called Sin City, you know what you're expecting.
But what I guess my point is, what I'm saying is the difference isn't so much. And I look, I don't disagree with you, Tom.
Yeah.
There were more black and white characters, and that is a layer of entertainment. But at the same time, I actually think what's missing these days is not that everybody is morally ambiguous or that we've got less easily identifiable heroes versus villains. I actually think it's because there's no depth to them. If you're going to do morally ambiguous,
which I was going to get to.
Sorry, Tom. Sorry, my
cut off.
Sorry.
I was going to say that it's just people are now using moral ambiguity as a way of disguising some bad character writing. Is basically was the end of that point.
Yeah, people are more.
But again, we're on the same page. It's just you jumped the gun there, Peter.
Sorry, my bad. I just think that these days there are too many characters in TV shows and movies are just cardboard cutouts. They represent one thing. They're way too atomic in that sense, and there's no complexity to the characters. If you're going to do grey, you have to be complex. You can't just slap a label on something and that make the entire character's psyche about that one thing, which, to be honest, is probably more a political message these days as well. We just slap labels on things and make the entire existence be around that thing, or at least try and push people towards that idea. And I think Hollywood's kind of reinforcing that.
It definitely is. And I mean, that's one of these things too, is it's like you look at all of these, and I mean, some of the movies and TV shows we're talking about so far aren't old. They're older, like they're 10 to 15 years old, but they're
probably older. Super Troopers is 2001.
So
yep.
23 years,
years old. So they're taking some of these things from back then and trying to inject them into a populace now, trying to inject them into TV shows and movies now without fleshing them out. And I mean, that's exactly the hole that some of the Marvel characters have fallen into with these movies post Endgame. They spent 2008 to whenever Endgame coming out really focusing on three main characters with Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America. And they fleshed those guys out really well. And then the others were support characters that were well fleshed out once the main guys had been established. And which led to the 7 or 8 people that were involved in Endgame. Like, and you being emotionally attached to almost every single one of those 7 or 8 characters across two movies. But they just kind of lost that afterwards, and they took the wrong lessons from what happened in that phase 1 through 3 or 4, whatever it was. And then tried to roll it out for different characters that
I think
didn't have the backstory or weren't fleshed out enough for people to care about.
But I also think they focused on the wrong aspects of the characters that they were dragging into that supporting cast. Like even Ant-Man. Ant-Man's a phase 2, phase 3 character? Must be phase 3. He came in pretty late, but he was there for Civil War.
End of phase 2.
Yeah. So
he was the last one of phase 2.
Yeah,
so wasn't really connected.
Yeah. So smack bang in the middle of that first kind of section, that first era, and yet I didn't find him a compelling character. But the comic book is quite compelling. Like the character in the comic book has a lot more depth to it than they have kind of displayed in the movies, and I find a lot of the content they've done since just doesn't have that emotional context to it anymore. I have to say they did a decent job with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, but I think that's because of Tom Holland more than it is about Spider-Man. Anyway. Anything else on that before I plow through mine? I'll plow through my TV shows first.
Okay, yep.
That way we can kind of, midpoint. And I've talked about this to death, so I'm not going to do it again. 2005 Doctor Who, season 2. So when David Tennant came in, and the first couple of seasons of David Tennant were just they've never managed to recapture that magic for me. And the very first episode of Matt Smith, when he walks through the
there's my David Tennant.
Nice. When he walks through the 3D hologram of all of the past Doctors, that's actually the very first episode I watched, and then went all the way back to Chris Eccleston. I didn't even know they had relaunched Doctor Who.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I didn't know that they had restarted Doctor Who until 2010. I just happened to be at my parents' house, and the first Matt Smith episode was playing. I'm like, what the fuck
See,
are
that
we
was
watching?
again. That was like another. I know you were going to put Doctor Who in, which is why I didn't, because it was like that was again. We watched Doctor Who with Dad because Dad was the massive Whovian. Yeah.
Yeah. So the very first episode I watched was episode 1 of season 6. So 2010, 2011. I was at my parents' house. They put some shit on. I was kind of half watching it, half talking to them, and I'm like,
yeah,
the fuck is going on? Is that the fucking TARDIS? What the fuck? Because the last Doctor Who episode I had watched would have been Tom Baker, when I was hiding behind a couch as a kid. So, and so I went home and I rolled out the Jolly Roger, and I went all the way back to Chris Eccleston and just gobbled that whole thing up. So,
absolutely, yeah.
And these days it's a hollow shell of what it used to be. It's not. It's not.
Yeah, I haven't gone back since Capaldi.
Yeah,
mid Capaldi, like both Emma and I just completely. We just dropped off. Yeah. We watched a few episodes of Jodie and liked Jodie as the Doctor, but just again, there was almost too much of a supporting cast.
I think she's an excellent actress. I really enjoy her in other stuff.
She just came off unfortunately, she came off a really boring, shitty season and never got. She didn't have the chance to run.
And I'm trying really hard to like the new Doctor. I am, and I'll probably continue making an effort for at least the next half season. But
yeah,
it's not aimed at me. It's too political. I don't. It's not that
I thought your review of it was very well done.
Thanks. House MD. I just finished rewatching the entire platform from start to finish, and and all the way through.
It's never Lupus.
It's never Lupus.
Oh yes,
almost got him.
It had just touched my lips, and I'm like, nah. You started to say it, and I'm like, got to pull the glass away.
There are very few shows, in my opinion, made since that TV shows that have pushed boundaries in a way that I can just sit there. It's the only series. It's one of the only series I can think of that I genuinely end up in tears laughing through several episodes a season. I live alone with cats. Like, I'm the crazy cat lady. It's one of the only shows that makes me fucking barely laugh alone in my apartment watching.
My only problem with House is it did exactly what I said Stargate didn't do, is it never evolved. It was always... It stayed the same across the 6 or 7 seasons that it ran.
No, I'd disagree. I'd say it evolved. I think it went deeper into its own...
To an extent, yeah.
Yeah. I think some of the season 5, season 6 from memory, when they really delved into his painkiller addiction, that was fucking heavy. That was super fucking heavy.
And the other reason it resonates for me is it's so and ironically for very similar reasons to the old Doctor Who, in a very different format, it is so fucking human. The characters are flawed in a really believable manner that makes you buy into the emotion behind it. There's for every belly laugh, there's some really dark, sad moments that there's a couple of tearjerkers throughout there too.
Absolutely,
I've got to say. And by the way, there was 11 seasons.
Oh, was there that many?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
2004 to 2012. I don't have it up on IMDb yet. Sorry, no, 8 seasons. My bad. 8 seasons. Closer to what you said than what I said. And the last one is Star Trek TNG, Next Gen. I could have picked any of the Star Treks. I never really watched DS9. I recently went back and watched TNG start to finish just because I knew there were episodes that I hadn't seen. Voyager for me was the one that fucking hooked me because I really liked the high-tech nature of it, and then went back to TNG and loved it all the way through. But to me, again, episodic content to me just isn't like that anymore. That's another creature feature TV series that just never really staled for me because it had that exploration. It had that celebration of the best parts of humanity. It never failed to acknowledge the darker parts, but it still celebrated the bright parts. And it's kind of similar, again, to Doctor Who. You know, Doctor Who, the bits that I liked, the seasons that I liked, celebrated what it was to be human and how everybody's important and unique, and the exploring. You know, I don't know if you remember some of the really early episodes with Tennant and the wonder on. I think he was at the end of Earth. They were on the viewing platform to watch Earth blow up, and he's like, and he just has this wonderment about him that
Guide? Restaurant at the end of the world,
very similar,
end of the universe.
But he just describes that, you know. But look at you now as a race. You're everywhere. You spread yourself across the galaxy. You are the explorers. We've got a million alien races, and you are the explorers. So, yeah. Anyway,
which is in stark contrast to the Agent Smith of the Matrix being like, "You are a cancer on the world."
Yeah. Cool. I think we'll take
Oh, there's a new upload episode. Best monologues.
Ooh.
Strap yourselves in. We're doing yeah, and you have to perform it. That's the condition. At the end of your beer, you have to perform your favorite monologue. There you go.
Second twist, no Blade Runner.
No Blade Runner. Yeah, okay. Blade Runner, the best monologue ever on film can be.
I literally
excluded.
think that's easily the best ad lib monologue of all time. Anyway,
yep.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Hey,
I think we're back. Not 100% sure.
You think we're back?
We're gonna talk about
in there.
chasing the dragon for video games. We're at the halfway point, but I think it's probably more likely the 2/3 point, to be honest.
Definitely the 2/3 point.
Yeah.
I think this will go quicker.
Yep. Do you want to kick off, Dan?
I can. These are another part of why this sort of inspired the idea in my head. So I've got my Friday night crew of Sui, Kelvin, and Steve. So the four of us play games every Friday night. We have since lockdown. And the very first...
Sorry, just Pete's little bastards there.
Yeah, I've been jealous. I've been jealous since the start.
It's unfortunate because most of the games we play are 4-player.
Yeah.
So the very
it's
first...
cold and there are wolves after me.
Well, it used to be Sinchek, Dan and I playing fucking Grand Theft Auto Online when that first came out. That was kind of the last real gaming crew. Anyway, carry on. Tell us your story, Dan.
Well, so the first game we played as the group was suggested by Kelvin, and it's a game called Pulsar. I've mentioned it before, and it's basically... And it's an indie game, but it's basically Star Trek running a starship, jumping between sectors and doing whatever needs to be done in the sectors. And the way we've been talking about it recently, because we just 2 weeks ago, we jumped into a new version that we called Void Crew that we thought might be something similar. But it was same, but different in a bad way. And what we ended up deciding was Pulsar is the first real co-op game we've played.
Okay.
So we've played a lot of games which are parallel play with each other, so as a group. So even Vermintide, things like that, where you play different characters within a group through a mission. But what you do within that level, within that mission, affects your other guys, but doesn't really affect your other guys. Everybody can kind of do everything. It's this and that. With Pulsar, you're a starship crew. You run the starship together, but you have your jobs. You are assigned your jobs. You're like red shirts, yellow shirts, blue shirts. It is Star Trek. So you are assigned what you have to do. Only the captain of the ship can access the star map. Only the captain of the ship can plot the jumps and start and command the crew in certain things. The engineer has his skills. I played the engineer, and he has to balance all of the power and usage and the coolant and the ships and repair things as you go, and like adjust the power for the pilot, adjust the power for the weapons, whatever is needed to be done. The engineer has to do that within the vital moments of combat or whatever the scenario happens to be. The pilot has to fly. The gunner has to gun. And the captain has to...
Captain the ship.
Captain. They have to direct the crew. So we decided this is the only true co-op game we've actually ever played. Like, a lot of the other games are co-op games.
Yeah.
But this is the only true co-op game where you
because
need
it's one
to
shared
do
outcome.
Yes, you need to do your assigned job for the success of the mission. If you don't do your assigned job, the mission does not succeed and the ship blows up and that's game over.
Isn't it the premise and the draw card to Skull and Bones? Isn't it very similar, but set in a very different kind of ship?
No, I think Skull and Bones, you are just a captain of your ship. You don't work as a crew.
Oh,
no,
okay.
well, no.
I think it's more like it's multiplayer online.
So it's an armada of ships that each individual player pilots.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But even if you want to draw comparisons there, Pete, Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves is you would go, okay, well, Sea of Thieves is just Pulsar as pirate. No, it's not, because in Sea of Thieves, you have no difference between you and the next person. Yeah, someone might steer the ship. Someone might look at the map while someone's steering the ship. Someone might arm the cannons, but you aren't assigned those jobs. You aren't a blue science officer. You aren't a gold commanding officer. You aren't a red security officer.
So it's probably closer to World of Warcraft, where if everyone doesn't play their role in a raid, everybody dies. You just don't get through it.
Yes and no, because there's certain
it's just a multiplayer game.
Just can't be. The World of Warcraft is just it's just a multiplayer game. This is a true co-op. Like, if we have no captain, we cannot jump.
Yeah. Well, but I disagree with you then. In terms of my experience, where in terms of the type of WoW experience I'm talking about, if you don't have a tank in your group of 5, if you're doing a 5-man raid, if you don't have a tank, you don't go into the dungeon because you'll get insta-wiped. If you don't have a healer, you get insta-wiped.
But you could go into the dungeon.
Yeah, you could physically go in there. It just wouldn't be able to get past the first trash mob.
But without a captain in Pulsar, you don't jump. You don't do anything. You stay in that sector and you die of hunger in that sector. There's no hunger involved, but I'm just using that as an analogy.
Yeah.
So we're saying this is the only true co-op game we've ever played, and we've played a lot over the last 3 or 4 years. And we're still literally chasing that dragon. We played Void Crew 2 weeks ago, and there was some incredibly funny moments where me and Sui were standing by the exit door airlock, and he opened the exit door. He disengaged the safety switch, and then he proceeded to open the inner door. He's got a video clip of it, and I laughed so much I actually couldn't breathe. I went silent on the video for a good 30 seconds to a minute because I was doubled over laughing because he voided me into space. I had the jetpacks are in the exit, the spacesuits are in the airlock, and we hadn't made it into the airlock. So he voided us into space, and I had no jetpack, so I was just stranded. There was the only thing that they could have done was side shift the ship over to me and swallow me up in the airlock so I could get back in, but that wasn't happening. So there was some funny moments like that, but it was a mission-based thing. It was very unbalanced, so you couldn't act like a crew. You couldn't repair the ship and continue on to the next jump. Even though that those mechanics were there for you to do, it just felt really unbalanced, and there wasn't that magic to it. Pulsar is you set off at the start of your mission, you jump over the galaxy. There's no break in it. The only break you get is when you're going through hyperspace to the next sector. Like, it's not mission based. There isn't finish a mission, go to a menu, restart, pick another mission, go there. It's very much set out on that exploration, like Star Trek. You go out to achieve this mission, and you go to space stations, and you put your wishes into the captain for him to buy things within the space stations that you're at, upgrades or coolants or things to keep the ship running or upgrade the ship. Where do we spend our credits? What sort of sector we jump to next? Do we jump to a sector that's got a planet that we can go down and explore and do some puzzles and then come back up, do an away mission, things like that? I mean, Pulsar is an incredible game done by an indie crew, so it's fantastic. And we have been chasing that dragon since 2020 to try and find that backup again. So I'll run through my other ones real quick. So my other one was
just quickly before you do, Dan. So I just did quickly look up Sea of Thieves in terms of that. There is an option to play Sea of Thieves as a 4-person crew, doing essentially what you just said, but the difference is you can just go in solo, sail your ship around, do your thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. There's an option to do what
you guys
I'm
sure
want,
it was advertised as crew or ship with your mates.
If you come in with a 4-player crew, you have someone who steers, someone who mans cannons, someone navigates, and someone who scouts from crow's nests, like, and you all board together. So you could do it, but it's not. But then you could also go, cool, the guys have gone. I'm going to take my little ship out, and I can do a solo adventure.
So we did play Sea of Thieves as well, and we took on those roles as well. And Sea of Thieves is fun, but there's actually not that much happening in the world. But the other one that we've been sort of chasing Valheim was the first survival game that we played together as well, and we kind of hit a high point with their playing that too. It's very simple graphics. It's got a very peaceful, fun world. We were logging in during the week, sort of 2 to 3 nights a week, whether it was 2 to 3 or all of us logging in just to collect resources. So when Friday night came around, our resources were there. We could do some building. We could go out and explore the next area and things like that. We've played a lot of survival games since, and crafting survival games since, and we've never quite hit that maybe 2 of us are really into it and 2 of us aren't. But there's never been a game since we've played Valheim that in that survival crafting genre that we've all gone, yep, I want to be in this world 2 to 3 nights a week kind of thing together.
My parents, I'm pretty sure, still log in from time to time just to maintain stuff.
Yeah.
Because they played it
incredibly peaceful. Yeah, incredibly peaceful just to get in, the music, the sun setting, all that. Just go and do a little bit of crafting, a little bit of Viking exploration, and it just hit a whole bunch of notes. And my last one is just Monkey Island, Secret of Monkey Island, adventure games. It was the first one I was exposed to.
Because if you hadn't, I probably would have.
And I just don't think anything's like, even after all the Monkey Islands, Full Throttle, Day of the Tentacle, I just don't think anything ever hit that magic of that Secret of Monkey Island. They've done several remasters. They've done another one recently, so it'd be interesting to jump in and play that again through. So that's me waffling for a good 10 minutes. So I'll leave it to you guys.
Tom?
Look, I think I've talked about it before, but the game that still I think about on the regular, and I will never stop thinking about it. And I know that if I ever went back and played it, or if they rebuilt it from the ground up and gave it new graphics and all that kind of stuff, I don't think it ever reached those heights. And it is the ultimate dragon for me, and it is Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. I was obsessed with that game. I have not replayed a game as many times as I have that. It was PS2 GameCube era. You had a party of 6. You could take 3 into battle. It was turn-based combat, and you ran kind of parallel to the Fellowship through the entire trilogy of films. It was at the height of the Lord of the Rings films coming out. Was when it was released. You started off with your Gondorian soldier. You had your elf and your dwarf, and then you got. Oh, this is testing the memory. You got a Rohirrim shield maiden who didn't have a shield, but she double wielded axes and she was useless. And then you got a ranger. You got a ranger of the north, and then you got, for some unknown reason, still to this day, you got a Rohirrim soldier, one of the Rohirrim, who for some reason could suck the soul out of an enemy. And if you gave him, like, literally, he put his hand forward, Mortal Kombat style, and there was like this purple swirling like energy that came out. And if you gave him enough soul stone, there were element stones. If you gave him enough, like, you overpowered him to the point where he could one-shot the Eye of Sauron.
That's
which
awesome.
You fought at one point. You fought the Eye of Sauron, and if you had him powdered up enough, if you changed the way his specs worked, he could just literally just go up and just would absorb the Eye of Sauron and then just walk away spinning his spear above his head, which was fucking sick as shit, in his full Rohirrim armor. But it was just like, there were plenty of tie-in games to the movies. You remember the Two Towers game, that great hack and slash. You had the Return of the King game, which was excellent. It was phenomenal. You had War of Middle Earth coming out at that time, 1 and 2, which, you know, expanded on like some of the more lore elements. And then Third Age just like kind of snuck in. It's kind of been forgotten about, but it's the game I replayed the most. I easily have start to finish that over 20 times, and I never got sick of it. I fucking loved it.
I've never seen it before. I'm watching. I've got an hour gameplay, and I'm just sort of scrubbing through it. I've never seen this game before.
Wow,
ever.
I fucking loved it. You fought the Balrog. You like ran through the entirety of Moria. You were in Edoras. You went through Fangorn Forest. You did everything. You went to every location. Killing
real
Mumakil on the
JRPG.
Pelennor Fields. Yeah, but it was just at the height when like Final Fantasy X was out. And like they really started bringing over those turn-based combat systems from JPRGs into Western RPGs, and it was, for me, it was like the perfect thing because I really couldn't get into a lot of the JPRG stories. Like I just couldn't figure out what the fuck they were talking about half the time.
Yes,
like I loved Final Fantasy X, but a lot of the time I was confused by the humor and the story beats. I was just like, they just don't work, and it was bad translation back in the day, and that's basically what it was. But this just really fucking worked. I adore and love this game and think about it more often than I should. It is my Roman Empire. I think about that more than I think about the Roman Empire. Just a single player experience, but I just start to finish it so many times. And look, if I had it on a modern system, I'd definitely be playing it again. The graphics would look shit, but I don't care. It was just, and then you had the whole Howard Shore soundtrack the whole way through. It was just a magical experience. And no game has ever come close to that for me. Maybe Ocarina of Time, maybe. The other thing as well, again, a shared experience, but it was, I've talked about it before, playing games like Titan Quest with my mates at the internet cafe, and we'd always try and make time to catch up, and we'd sit in there and we'd go through a certain thing. We'd always have one mate who had to go back to town to sell his items so he'd get enough gold, or, you know, because that's all he did. He went around collecting items on the ground while we were killing all the enemies. But the same crew of guys, and it's similar to what Dan was talking about. There was 4 of us, and then we had but we'd be back at my mate James's house, and we'd be playing Smash Brothers from 10 p.m. until 5 a.m. every day, trying to get making weird rules for ourselves for our weird combats. Like, everyone has to play as Kirby, so you can't absorb everyone's powers, and then who's the best Kirby player? It's like, that's just dumb. But sure, it was 4 a.m. and we were all, a few beers deep and having a great time. But it's like those memories live on, and like I don't think I've ever had a multiplayer experience like that, and I don't think I ever will going forward. Like, just it was straight out of high school. We were free as a bird, but we just chose stick ourselves in a sweaty little room with one little box fan in the middle of summer in Chatswood and fire up the GameCube and play Smash Brothers for 8 hours straight while smashing beers. And then someone would bring out their tobacco. I bought my mate a Gandalf tobacco pipe for his birthday one year, and then suddenly he's smoking that while playing Smash Brothers. I turn around, I'm like, this is the weirdest combination of things I've ever seen. But yeah, it's just like it's that heyday of that post high school freedom.
Yeah.
Of, we were kings of the world, we could do whatever we want, and we chose to sit in a room and play games for hours on end. And I would literally trade anything in the world for it. It was nothing will ever take that away from me, and it's a very special memory that I fondly love bringing up with people. But yeah, again, that shared experience of that, it's just the endless banter and horrible things we said to each other in the middle of the night probably pissed the fuck out of the neighbors as well. Like, they must have hated us. But yeah, Peter, on to you.
I went back even further because my first video game experiences were less multiplayer. I did the LAN party thing for a long time. That was Medal of Honor, Allied Assault, and that kind of era of Mohar's the best. Fucking the Snowflow rifle. We used to have a German manager in my first job, and we had a massive LAN party pretty much every Friday night. It was called Fragfest. And his thick German accent while playing Mohar was just perfect. Yep. We're going to do Stalingrad. We must do Stalingrad. like, dude, don't say it with that. Doesn't have another accent. So I went further back. I went to Zach McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders. I have talked about that game on this podcast before. It was one of the early Lucasfilm games using the Scum engine. It was after Manic Mansion on the Commodore 64.
Maniac Mansion.
Sorry, Manic Mansion. I think that's a song. Anyway, but yeah, the old Lucasfilm or LucasArts video games.
LucasArts, yeah.
Zach McCracken always stood out in my mind as one of those adventure click, point and click adventure films in the same vein as Secret of Monkey Island, but its storyline captivated me as a teenager. What's the body language going on there, Dan? Are you reading about it?
I'm watching.
Yeah, it's fucking hilarious.
It's just bringing back memories of how these older games used to play, where you would go walk to, but then you had to pick multiple things to tell the character what to do. I mean, it really was just an evolution, a video game evolution of tabletop gaming.
Yeah,
and that's
100%.
really what they were going for. Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
I just remember Zach. In Zach, there was yak milk. You had to collect the yak hair, and there's just so many random memories that don't make any sense to anyone unless you played the game. And so that whole series of games, but Zach McCracken's the one that stands out for me. And then all the dungeon crawlers. So Dungeon Master, Eye of the Beholder 1, 2, and 3. I remember sitting there so excited as probably a preteen into my teenage years, where you had 15 3.5-inch floppy disks that you had to fucking insert in order to install the game. I remember Dungeon Master, you had to eject halfway through one of the dungeons, and I remember I couldn't find the second disc for like an hour, and I was probably in tears. I'm fairly certain I was crying. Where the fuck's the second disc? I wouldn't have been swearing at the time.
Three brothers.
Yeah. Eye of the Beholder. I have fond memories of Eye of the Beholder 3. I think we went to the Games Wizards. The video game store at the time, back when it was all bricks and mortar. And coming home with a big cardboard box with all the discs inside and a big manual. Even Black Crypt was a lot later. And yeah, that was an Amiga game rather than a C64 game. But all those dungeon crawlers, I remember, and I copied my dad. I remember sitting there with grid paper, drawing the maps, because it was before you had automatic maps, and they're all real-time games. So the monsters moved in real time, and you could move around in real time, but it was all grid-based. So, 4 steps forward, 2 steps to the right would always be the corridor into the next dungeon. And a lot of the puzzles in the games are spatially based. So you had to pick up a rock from this room and move it to the other side of the dungeon, put a rock there, or find the special sword and put the sword in the sconce or the torch in the 4 sconces to open up.
It's unlocking a memory for me, Pete. Fuck.
And then you fall into it, and then you fuck up one of the pit, like the pressure plate puzzles, and a pit opens up, and you drop 3 floors down, take a shitload of damage. You're in a dark room, and then you're surrounded by bad guys. And if you manage to survive, then you have to work your way back up to where you were, because your map's all fucked up. Now you're flipping through grid paper trying to figure out where the fuck you are. So yeah, no, I have lots of fond memories of those kinds of games. And I know they still make them. Like Steam, you can still go out and get. We were talking about The Legend of Grimrock. They've actually done a sequel now. And there are modern dungeon crawlers, but to me, I'm almost hesitant to want to test them out, because Legend of Grimrock was good, but I don't want to tarnish the memory.
But it's also chasing that dragon. That's exactly what this episode's about. You have that ingrained, like, that is part of who you are.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like you were never going to capture that dragon again, because that was a special time in time space that has molded who you are. And I mean, is also why we're here having this discussion. It's like it's kind of come around. So it's one of those things. Like, it's just. And I mean, I guess the end of this conversation, I mean, not cutting you short here, it's something to think about down the track, is should we try and recapture that dragon?
I think a lot of modern films, especially based in the universes, let's just use the term they use, universes that we love, have relied too heavily on nostalgia and taking us back to that. without any meaningful content behind it, and have, in a way, a lot of like tarnished a lot of people's memories of that nostalgia. I think unless you're doing it in a lovingly crafting way, and we're talking about ports, like just going back to straight ports, some of them play so horribly on modern consoles. Like, why ruin my childhood by giving me the option of playing this game again if you're not going to lovingly like rebuild it? Like, don't do a cheap cash in. Perfect example is when I played Pod Racer from 64 and I played it on PS5. And I was like, this is dumb. Why the fuck am I playing a 64 game on the PS5? It was, it was just there. Like, it was like, minimal amount of cash. It was $5 or whatever. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go back and play it. And it was fun to play it for a bit, but it was just like, no, I've got all this modern technology. I would want you, especially in a game sense, I want you to go back, create me a pod racer game again using modern Unreal Engine 5 or whatever up to now.
Yep.
And blow my fucking socks off. I think that's a better way of like recreating that magic and going back and like loving than straight port, which I think is the easy cash sale
100%.
Nostalgia hit.
100%. And to me, like I don't have problems with nostalgic callbacks.
No.
But if you contrast, like Captain Marvel was a cheap cash in on nostalgic callbacks to the 80s and 90s compared to Stranger Things, where it's set in that world, and there's a lot more depth to that nostalgia. It's not just, oh, look at the poster we put in the background. How cool are we? Because we made a callback to that movie that was out at that time. That's, to me, that's a cash-in attempt. But there's no depth to it. It doesn't try and capture the spirit.
No. And I would say on that, just like, and I agree that I think the setting in the 90s was a good idea, but it was cheaply done.
And it was too much.
But I think it would have been, if they'd done it in a series like Stranger Things, it would have worked. But because it's done in a 2-hour film, it doesn't have the legs to stand on, kind of thing.
Yeah,
but I totally get what you're saying. 100% what you're saying.
They felt like sets.
There was too many references.
Stranger Things felt like the world because we can relate to that because we were born in that world. But Captain Marvel felt like sets.
Yeah, I just think Captain Marvel tried to tick too many boxes of nostalgia in too short a time frame. And I don't mean the 2-hour time frame. I mean the blockbuster scene. There are too many obvious references.
Yep, okay.
Don't want to derail this, so remind me of something when this topic is coming to an end.
Sure. Even Elvira, if you look up the Elvira video game, it was another dungeon crawler, but it had an actress on the front who had a very, very low cut top on, and it's in pixelated fucking 8-bit graphics. But it was like, there's boobies, and I would have been...
What?
I would have been... So 1990? So I would have been 8 when that game came out. I probably would have been 11 or 12.
That's fucking... What's her name from the Addams Family?
Cassandra Peterson was the actress they used.
Yeah.
And I don't think I ever played the game. It's another dungeon crawler. I might have played it, but I always remember, I shouldn't be looking at that because that's naughty. So there's a lot of random memories.
Peter, let's admit we all walked down the nudie aisle in the video store back in the day when no one was looking.
Maybe an 8. I actually don't know.
Definitely an 8.
Probably. Just out of innocent curiosity. But to me, like I could probably, there are games still coming out to this day that fit into that dungeon crawler genre. I just I don't want to ruin the memory. And yet I've gone through some really interesting walks through nostalgia. I when the PSP came out, one of the first games I bought was Sid Meier's Pirates. Now that's a game that I was too young to understand how to play successfully. I enjoyed the game, but I couldn't finish it because I was too young and stupid. And I played that on the PSP from start to finish and absolutely fucking loved it. And to me, that recaptured the magic.
I'm the same. Switch, the Flight to America I had, and I got 80 out of 120 stars in Mario 64. I had the time of my life. I don't regret not sleeping on that flight at all. And I never will. I was so captivated by being back in that castle. and just running around collecting stars and doing triple jumps off walls and shit. Like, and just the magic of the music and everything. It was just like, this is perfect. But but that was a straight port which worked. It's like that was able to recapture the magic. But I think some other games I've played that have been ports, and like the good one that I haven't touched, which thankfully I've kind of listened. Stubborn dickhead that I am. I often don't listen to other people's reviews of stuff until I've tried it myself, because I always know best for what's on my
100%
head.
with you there.
100%. But the ports they did of the old school Battlefront 1 and 2 that they recently redid for modern consoles, and everyone is talking about just how jarringly badly it's done, and just like it's clipping, and it's just there's none of the magic that was there when you played it the first time. Like, really glad that I stayed away from that. Like, that's a thing I'm very glad that I stayed away from, kind of thing. Yeah.
Dan, what were you going to say, mate?
So this actually had nothing to do with my thoughts of this topic at all, but what popped up in my YouTube feed was one of those people that creates modern IPs in AI as envisaged as different things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was Baldur's Gate in Panavision. So Panavision back in
like
the old
like 60s
Jason and the Ark. And I was looking at that.
Like Thunderbirds.
Was that in Panavision, was it?
No, Panavision.
Thunderbirds was
Panavision's
definitely
like
Panavision.
No, just like Jason and the Argonauts, like that kind of old school original Clash of the Titans, that sort of aesthetic and feel. And I was like, if someone made a movie in that style without trying to put filters, without trying to put HD over the top of it, but using modern CGI in it for any monsters or anything like that, that could be a truly incredible, unique experience.
Yeah.
Because it's a visual, it's a traditional Hollywood aspect that really works, and it feels fantastical and old and clean, and there's something about it. And then if you were to interject a modern CGI orc into that, but it's still in that older Panavision style, that's something that could really spark the imagination and the interest of a lot of people. Thomas?
Yeah. On the reverse of that, so have you guys watched Godzilla -1 yet?
No.
Not yet, no.
Okay. Just watch that and then come back to me about that point. But the reverse, in terms of what you're saying about putting the modern CGI orc into...
So it's modern graphics, but old school storytelling style.
No, it's like the Panavision monster in a modern shot film. That is Godzilla -1.
Yeah, okay.
I'm watching
it. It works amazingly well.
I'm watching the Baldur's Gate AI.
Oh, you are? Yeah.
1950s,
yeah. Doesn't it look incredible?
It fucking does. It
wouldn't
looks
that
legit.
Be something? Yeah, wouldn't that be something that if you saw a trailer for that would be like, fuck me. Like, not only does it go to those sick days when I had chickenpox when I was like 5 or 6, and I got to watch Jason and the Argonauts and
it reminds me of Red Sonja. For some reason.
Definitely. Well, Red Sonja, a little bit. The little Red Sonja was probably a little bit later. Panavision sort of 60s, 70s.
Sinbad.
Red Sonja was 80s. Yep. Yeah, Sinbad, the original Sinbad movies. Like, if it just feels that could be something that really stood out these days. Like, choose that aesthetic, but don't make a joke of it. Like, don't do it seriously.
Yep.
And do it not as a token thing. Do it, really lean into it, and commit. Do it in that. Yeah, commit.
We are going to make plastic sets again.
Yeah, but
that was 100%. Thunderbirds was entirely shot in Panavision. The original Thunderbirds was all shot in Panavision.
Yeah, and I just think that these are the things of like chasing those dragons that could actually work. Bring those things back that really talk to. But I mean, it does have to be backed up by a good traditional story. But I think it's some of those things that could really work and like make a fucking $1 billion because it's something unique and different. So.
The fucking beholder at the end of that sequence was amazing.
Until everyone fucking does it. That's the problem. Then you have Yeah. You get that first couple of ones that do it really well, and then you have,
But again,
they're
chasing the dragon.
Yeah, that's it. They're chasing the dragon.
They're chasing that.
You have your
$1 billion.
Sonys and you have your Disneys and you have your Foxes all making Panavision
all
style
different IPs. They'll
Yep.
bring back Clash of the Titans and all those ones again. So,
It's pointless me having lights in my kind of recording studio when the fucking cat sits right in front of it. It's a cool shot from my angle, from what you guys can't see, but it's kind of like the bat symbol in front of the fucking moon. That's the cat right now, but just notice how dark my shot went. Shall we quickly move through some beers that have blown our minds, and then we'll wrap the episode because we're running out of time pretty quickly.
Yep. We'll call it here. Who's going first?
I'll go first because I got one that's very simple. I just got the Mountain Goat Hightail Ale on Nitro, just a 4.5% red ale on Nitro. It was one of the pioneering kind of craft beers. They made it for 10 years, then they stopped. They curved it just before. Was it just before or just after the buyout? I can't remember when they moved as part of CEB. But that beer was one of the first, like the Young Henry's Real Ale, was one of the first on that journey into craft that I took and that really captivated me. He says as he's drinking a red ale now, obviously they've taken hold into my brain and will never let go and never shall they. Slick Rick by Yuli's, by the way, fucking cracking beer. But yeah, it's just that's one beer that's always stuck with me. When Young Henry's brought back the real ale this year, actually for the part of some of their anniversary beers, I was ecstatic. I was just like, oh, good, they've gone back to making good quality beer again. Let's go. And I went in and I smashed like 8 pints of it, and I had the greatest time because it was, it's 3.5%, just a lovely traditional English like real ale.
Yep.
Little bit amber, perfect, malty caramel, little bit of hot character, fantastic. But yeah, it was a pioneering start of my craft beer journey, if you want to call it that. If we call it I don't know what we call it these days, independent craft, whatever you want to call it. Good beer journey. Let's call it my good beer journey. But then just any old school West Coast still for me. You're making a good old school West Coast. The 3 in my fridge right now, and not to tickle your undercarriage, Dan, but yes, there is a Esker West Coast in there. There's Grifter, Big Sur, and there's Batch West Coast. They're my
nice.
They're my 3
go-tos.
They're my 3.
Yeah,
equal podium. I would smash those beers any day of the week. But yeah, that's my beers that I'll always go back to.
Dan?
Peter.
Okay. For me, chasing the dragon for craft beer, because my whole craft beer journey has been recorded on this podcast. That was the point at the start, was that I knew nothing about craft really, and you guys were taking me on the journey. So everything I've learned about craft beer, I've learned on this podcast. But the one that stands out for me more than anything was Moondog's Baron of Barrels. The first year we sat down there for the New Year episode, we hadn't recorded in person for
fucking
yonks.
sensational.
I think that was maybe COVID year, maybe.
That was like the end of COVID.
Yeah, I think it was the first time we'd gotten together for a long time. Yeah. And you know what? It's as much about the shared experience of just watching Dan just melt. Like just silence. And that first reaction, as much as the flavor, and it all plays together. I think I've bought Baron.
And I think I'm pretty sure in that episode you turned to me and I'm just glugging it, just being like, this is so good.
I mean, it was a spectacular beer.
Yeah.
But I've tried it 2 more times since, and I've been chasing the dragon, and it has not been as good because it wasn't that shared experience. I wasn't roasty warm from the Imperial Stouts because we did the Brick Lane Trilogy of Fear before. That was probably the pissiest episode we've had.
That was the 5-hour episode, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was I think it was the darkest.
That's the
night
thing.
episode.
We were just having a fucking time with the
we
boys.
hadn't
were
seen
on
each other for ages.
Thin Lizzy, cue the Thin Lizzy. The boys were back in town. Yeah,
yeah. So that's definitely my beer of chasing the dragon. Yeah, Dan?
Yeah, and my ones, I've mentioned it. I'm sure I've mentioned it over the years.
Far too many times.
Cake hole of Moondog. I love it.
As soon as the weather turns cold, I'm pretty sure you just yell cake hole into a microphone.
They don't make it anymore, man. I went into Moondog down in Melbourne. I've been there several times, and I said, "Have you got any cake hole?" And it was like, "No, we haven't made that in ages." And it was like, "Don't fucking laugh at me."
Yeah,
it's like, I like that beer, all right.
Pack of C words.
It's phenomenal beer. I loved it. It was just it exactly is what it says it is.
Yep.
It doesn't pretend to be anything more. It provides the flavor and is the one beer that I've never ever tried to replicate.
Yeah, right.
That I've liked.
So you refuse to chase that dragon in your own professional life.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I refuse to try and make it out of my own brain.
You're not cocky enough, kid.
Yeah. I was cocky enough to try and remake Day of the Dead by Garage Project, which is my other beer, which is I'm very disappointed that they don't make that anymore. It was a coffee chocolate Mexican. There's a Mexican drink that it's named after, and
I know the one. Yeah,
probably the first Doc from Doctor's Orders bought me a bottle of that for one Christmas, and it was probably the first very unique craft beer that I tried. And I did try and arrogantly remake that a couple of times. Never obviously made it to the standards of that they made it, and I'm really disappointed that these guys don't make either of those beers anymore because I love it. It's just like Day of the Dead was chocolate, coffee, chili, lowly carbonated, just fucking 700 ml bottles, 750
had the
ml
skull
bottle.
candy.
Skull
candy.
You can still get the artwork and posters and t-shirts are all on their website. They just don't make the beer anymore.
Yeah,
or they don't release it in Australia. I don't know.
Organic blue agave syrup. Don't forget the agave.
Yes, the agave in it. So there was a lot to it, and it was a fantastic beer in some of the earlier years of Garage Project. So they're my two big ones.
Sorry, Dan.
No, I was just going to say, just going off what Tom said, my introduction to craft beer back in the very early 2000s was Little Creatures Pale Ale. And I still remember the taste of that very first Little Creatures Pale Ale. And I'm like, I didn't know beer could taste like this. And it was just the hop character. Before that,
it actually had flavor.
I didn't.
Everything else.
See, for me, it was the malty goodness.
Yeah, but you were probably spoiled for choices by the time you were 18.
It was Tui's Extra Dry Platinums or Tui's Extra Dry.
Fucking love it.
Thank you very much.
I'll have a case.
And I got the Platinums because they were 8% and they came in an 8-pack and fucked you the fuck up.
Yeah. I'll have a case of Teddy's, thanks.
I drank so much Ted Platinum, it wasn't funny.
Yeah.
God, I'm surprised my liver didn't shut down when I was 21.
There wasn't Ted Platinums when I was drinking Ted's.
You missed.
That was later.
That was around the years of the Stollies. So Stollies came out, and geez, did that redefine how drunk women would get in nightclubs. And I'm not saying anything dark there at all. And then the Smirnoff Double Blacks came out and just fucking wiped the floor with them. That was the start of the premix era, really. You just reminded me, Dan. There's one more that has to go in there as Chasing the Dragon, and that's Flesh Wound by the Dock. I drank so much Flesh Wound. That was the stone beer on Volcanic Rock.
Yep.
I was obsessed with that beer at the start of the podcast.
I just had the Garage Project, speaking of, combining the two stories, they just re-released their Red Hot Rock Ale, their Volcanic Stone Red Ale. I'd had a can of it the other week. It was amazing. Highly, if you can grab it, if you can find it, grab it.
Oh, Pete's already on the website.
Treat yourself. You might need to look up some.
Darted to the keyboard. His eyes went off to the left.
Look up some bottle shops. But I had it the other week, and it was I was thoroughly impressed with it. I was like, oh, do I crack the Slick Rick, or do I grab the Stone and Wood Stone beer? I have the can of that in the fridge. And I was like, oh, I'll save that for when I'm not gonna completely demolish that can that I have. But try that one. Get your mouths around that.
That was an Imperial Irish Red Stein beer, Flesh Wound.
This one isn't Imperial. It's lower ABV, but it was very, very good.
This was on the low end of Imperial. It was 7%. I'm just looking at it now.
Yeah.
It was.
But there's been so many cracking beers over the years I can think of. I think I fondly remember the time I tasted my first barley wine.
I gotta pee real bad.
Tasted my first barley wine with mates, and it was just like I didn't know beer could be that strong. I thought it was beer or spirits, and it was that mind-opening thing. It was It was a 6-string barley wine. I remember, and I had it just before I was in Uncle Hop's, and it was the month before I took over and got given the place to run. We were there for a mate's birthday, and it was just like, hey, try this. This is 12.5%. I was like, oh, yeah, you can really taste the booze. And then I was like, oh, shit, I'm fucked off
But that's a light barley wine. I mean, the barley wine you gave us was 20%. I think it's 20%.
I don't think it's a barley wine. I think it's a imperial. But you're right. It's light. Barley wine's usually about 16.
Yeah. Whereas actual wine's only about 13.5%, 14%.
Yeah. But yeah, that was one of those 6-string from the Central Coast, one of their early day beers. I remember that. And then sure enough, not long after that, I was running my own craft bar and buying beers for myself, and
the old Uncle Hops.
Rest in peace.
I still remember the Mountie County day that we did with who was that? That wasn't Moondog?
No, that was Stockade, and it was Kane from Stockade.
Yep.
Good old Kane Mansell. Yep. Yes.
I think
still floating around somewhere. Good old Kane.
I think that'll probably wrap us for the episode. Chasing the Dragon.
I think it's a beautiful point to end on.
Yes,
toasty and warm from all the beers.
And the scotch.
What are you drinking, scotch-wise?
The Macallan 12-year-old sherry barrel-aged.
Yes, we were talking about that a couple of weeks ago. I'm impressed. You are not nearly alcoholic enough, because if I talk about something 2 weeks ago, that bottle's probably gone a week and a half ago.
Hey, man, it's $165 a bottle. I think you need to sit on it. You got to intercut it with other things. No, I don't drink much these days anyway, but special occasions.
Fair enough. All right. If you made it this far, thank you very much for listening. We'll see you in a couple of weeks for the normal news and reviews episode.
Essentially.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.